Is that a lovely sound? All right. Well, we will go ahead and get started. I know we have quite a loaded presentation here, so as little talking as I have to do, that'll be much better for everyone involved. So just a couple quick reminders as we get started here. My name is Ryan Hecht. I'm the marketing director at your Arvada Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank everyone for being here. And this is our third webinar in the marketing webinar series this fall. We decided after the first webinar that actually one of our presenters, Katie Winter, was on, decided, rather than the webinar format, let's do a Zoom meeting so we can see everybody's beautiful faces bright and early in the morning, have some interaction. I challenged our presenter Denny in the last webinar to tell some jokes. So, you want to see some interaction with these webinars. So if you feel comfortable putting on your camera, that would be great. If not, I know it's early. Get some coffee and maybe we'll see your face later in the presentation. Couple other reminders for the webinar this morning. If you have a question throughout the presentation, put it into the chat. We'll get to it at the end, or if it's relevant, we'll get to it in the middle of the presentation, and I can jump in and ask those questions if that's okay. Otherwise, we ask you just to remain on mute. You never know if your dog's going to bark in the middle or your kid's going to come into the room and say hi. So for everybody involved, please be on mute throughout the presentation. And then we will also send out a recording of the presentation, contact information for our amazing presenters, and then a copy of this presentation, because there are a lot of links. There's a lot of resources in this presentation. So you're going to want to look through those again. And then as a reminder, our last presentation in this webinar series is November 17th. It's an expert panel on rebranding lessons. So as I mentioned in the last webinar, you may have seen around town that transformation from the Coors Credit Union to On Tap Credit Union. The Arvada Center had an amazing rebrand recently. Congratulations, Marcus. And then Piper Electric also just announced a rebrand, and that is really beautiful. So we will have the marketing and creative directors from those brands on to talk about what went into those rebrands, the rollout, and the lessons that they learned that might help you if that's something you're considering down the road. So join us again. That's November 17th. It's free. So register on arvadachamber.org/events. Let's get on to today's speakers. Like I mentioned before, really happy to have these amazing presenters as resources for the Arvada Chamber and for our Arvada Chamber members. So first of all, I mentioned Katie Winter, founder and owner of For the Win Communications. She is a New York native of For the Win Communications, a home-based boutique marketing and branding company. From a young age, Katie has enjoyed all forms of communication and utilizes her professional work in community building and student engagement to inform her practice of integrative, creative marketing strategy to help her clients achieve their win. When Katie isn't fixing a broken API key or detangling a MailChimp, you can find her on the ice as an avid hockey mom and volunteer coach. In this time of year, you're incredibly busy, so thank you for your time. We also have Sarah Flanagan Silcott, creative director for the Win Communications, also the owner and creative director of Flanagan Silcott LLC. Sarah has more than a decade of experience in marketing and branding, winning her clients over 120 national awards. Utilizing her theater background, Sarah conducts in-depth character studies on all of her clients. That's amazing. She puts herself in your shoes, your client's shoes, and the competitor's shoes, which is very important, and I think we'll get to that, to make sure your brand stands tall and walks with confidence above the rest. Thank you, Sarah, and welcome. And then not to be outdone on the theater side of things, we have Marcus Turner, Director of Communications and Audience Services for the amazing Arvada Center for the Arts and Humanities. Marcus, in this role, oversees marketing, sales, public relations, and house management for all divisions of a multidisciplinary arts organization. Prior to his work at the Arvada Center, Marcus worked with SCFD, Northwestern University, and the University of Denver in a variety of marketing, fundraising, and admin positions. And I will mention both Marcus and Sarah. You may have seen them on the stage at some point. So lots of creative and arts experience here on this panel. So yeah, Katie and myself. Yeah, we may be background players, if anything, on the stage. So I will get to the presentation. I think maybe Katie will take it away from here. Welcome and thank you.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today. And also, be a part of this great team with Marcus and Sarah, who I get to work with on a daily basis as creative director. And bringing to you with our presentation, there is a lot, but we want to get to it all. Sarah and I are going to kick this off with Marcus adding some context, going through some basic foundations of brand and strategy with marketing. And then we're going to let Marcus is going to give some great color commentary here and also talk about the amazing marketing suite and what he does with the Arvada Center that you see every day floating around in our space here in our community. There's a lot of Wizard of Oz going on behind the curtain to make sure that the shows at the Arvada Center are put up and scaled well and are advertised and broadcasted to the community. And there's a lot of cool tricks and things that Marcus does. But one of the things we want to start with, the very, 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 very core foundation of this is your brand. It is imperative that clients are locked in to who they are, what they do, and why and how it serves the community. So Sarah, why don't you take it over and talk about this very interesting brand that you created that is actually a bilingual brand, so it adds a little bit of difference to it. But talk about some of those core foundations of this work.
Sure. Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having us today. So just a little bit of background here as we go through today. Having, as has been mentioned, having a really solid foundation is really the only sound way to build a house, I guess, we'll put it that way. So you want to make sure your brand is really, really solid. You have your brand strategy. You've gone through all of the exercises for that, and you have something consistent like what you're seeing here. So this is some examples of a brand that is there. He's a local attorney, used to work for Frank Azar, went independent. We built this entire brand out to be sort of atypical for what the competitive space has for them. We did a huge research project to try and really comb through what everyone else was doing branding and content wise. So you can see on the left, that's a mood board. That I love that tool. I use that to put together a visual language for everything. Now you can see the suite all the way from, we have mood board, website, that's a folder, and other things, business cards, flyers that go along with the brand suite. So this is the foundation, and it sounds like you guys are going to get another good intro or some more depth on that coming up. So that's really awesome.
Marcus, do you want to talk, Marcus? I mean, you noticed something in here about the dual language. I know the Arvada Center has worked very hard on inclusivity in its practice. And so can you talk a little bit about what you see in this brand foundation work and some of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So really kind of the brand foundation just talks about, specifically with the Arvada Center, we set out on doing a rebrand 4 years ago, and we're still in the process of kind of getting the brand under our legs. A brand is something that it's not like a set it and forget it type thing, really. It has to be consistently evaluated and has to be consistently measured to see the impact that the brand is making. And the example that Katie and Sarah have given here is a really great one, because if you're reaching out to a specific client base or a specific customer base and you're not reaching those needs with your existing brand, or even with some of the changes, you have to leave some room for flexibility in a brand. And that will inform the copy, the creative, the content, the strategy that lays out future in digital advertising and print advertising and everything else that comes along with how you as a brand or your organization as a brand interacts with the community or interacts with your potential customers. So the example that Katie and Sarah presented here obviously means that this had to have bilingual copy and content as a part of it to reach out to those specific customers that really would benefit from the services that Wade was able to present here. And that's something that we've taken on at the Arvada Center as well, hiring professional translators in specific areas to translate some of our copy from English into Spanish is where we're starting, and looking at English into Polish is our next area that we're looking to do some translation areas as well. And that comes from demographic analysis of who's actually coming to our center and who we're actually trying to serve. So it's all about, I keep saying the word measure and evaluate, but that's a big, big part of it.
Cool. And then in the next slide, talking about, if you offer a variety of products and services, Sarah is going to walk through this brand guideline for a retail product. So this is a national product that is on store shelves. And so the brand guidelines, Sarah, if you want to talk a little bit, and I'm sure Marcus can comment about how the Arvada Center does so many different things and has so many different quote unquote products and services, maybe not selling things on a shelf, but can you talk a little bit about what this brand guidelines is and what it does for companies?
Yeah, so this is what would come next after the branding work, which what you would see with the mood board, and after logos are finalized, color palettes are finalized. This is a booklet that, of course, is kind of a living document, because as those things need to be revisited, they should be, but it is something that you set in the most firm format that you can and give it to everybody who works for you. So every single person has their brand pillars. They have one of the things that Marcus and I agree on loving with these types of brand guidelines is setting up guidelines for the type of language to use. Use aspirational language, say health, don't say death, that type of a thing. So this is this brand, they're in Louisville, but they are a national, they're in Whole Foods and Sprouts and all that stuff. So you can go get their stuff. So you can see their different logo variations that we set up and that are ready to go when it's time to put into any materials, including digital. And in this brand guidelines, it has literally everything. There's even sample types of photography, sample social media grids, sample designs so that if it's not me forever designing for them, which it isn't, I'm not their on-staff designer, I'm creative director. So I need to be able to give this to somebody and have them be able to run with it and be able to use it to create all of the amazing digital things that we're going to be talking about. I did link you guys to this. It's I'm going to ask that it stays within this, the chamber and is not a publicly produced, reproduced thing, but I do want you to see it. It's a 20+ page document, and have fun, dig through it.
So Marcus, let's just be honest, Marcus, everything that comes out of the Arvada Center is not created by you. And so can you talk a little bit about how you pass off a brand guidelines book to printers and marketers and newspapers and other outlets, and how that keeps your brand looking consistent, even if you have multiple people doing your creative?
Absolutely. It's crucial. It's crucial to have what may be considered the minutia or the details of these things covered in a brand book. The one that stands out to me in this example is the logo standards about the space around a logo. For those who have seen the Arvada Center logo, we have a element in the middle that's a spindle with little arms coming off of it. And what that means is we have to be very specific about, like, the spindles can't touch stuff above it, the spindles can't touch stuff below it, because that muddies it and that makes it look unclear. And when we did our study of our brand, we did a survey of thousands and thousands of stakeholders, volunteers, patrons, board members, staff members, and really trying to figure out where our equity and our brand was built up, and if we were going to change, if we were going to build this foundation, what it looked like. There was talk about the name of the organization, and our equity is really built up in the name Arvada Center, not necessarily Arvada Center for the Arts and Humanities, our full name. So when you see us present our logo, we are presenting it as 9 times out of 10 as Arvada Center. And that's it, because that's what during our study phase, we figured out that people know us as, and that's where all of our brand equity is built up. So we were able to capitalize on that. And then in your question, Katie, about when we pass off these guidelines or when we pass off creative control to someone else, we know that we have at least a list of things that are going to keep our brand integral. The integrity of our brand is going to be held up. We only use the words Arvada Center to describe ourselves. If you're going to use the full name, it's not Arvada Center for the Performing Arts. That's the wrong name. It's Arvada Center for the Arts and Humanities. So it's these distinctions that, again, may seem like minutia, but they help build the equity up for a brand so strongly that when people are interacting with digital ads, so they're interacting with other types of ads that are out there in the community, you get this moment where they can see your visuals, they can see your creative, and they recognize it immediately, and they know what they're looking at. There's all these ideas of like sub brands that we don't need to get into now, but it really building up the palette, building up the pillars, building up the language. What Sarah is referring to really that I really like about the brand. And by the way, for anyone on this webinar, I'm really happy to share the Arvada Center's brand book as well. If anyone's interested in seeing it, I'm happy to share that. We have these this, not that statements in our brand book, which are really, really helpful for us in establishing identity. We are professional, not stuffy. We are playful, not juvenile. So, we're trying to, it helps us put some guardrails around our identity, and that informs creative, that informs what we look like, that informs what we sound like, and helps us really establish the look and feel of the Arvada Center as a brand person, if you will. I would love to.
So I think, yeah, you've got a request in the chat here from Sarah saying, yeah, please share. And I think it's really great to show these examples of how when you're after the foundation is built, and now we're moving into the strategy portion of, having your brand set. And now, Sarah, I'm going to kick it over to you and Marcus. I know this is part of overarching strategy and how you get your potential clients, your prospective clients engaged and also retain them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Marcus is going to touch on a kind of a little bit evolved kind of version of this that's very specific for his industry, but I think it's great too. So keep in mind that, like anything, things are theoretically changing too. So what you're seeing here is what's called the AIDA model: awareness, interest, desire, action. We add retention there, which leads back up to start the funnel again for whatever you're going to be doing to keep your customers. And so whenever you are producing anything, your materials will fit into one of these tiers. And whatever we do, this helps us inform who we have to figure out who our audience is. And we'll go through all of the, you can do tons of research and homework to do all of these, get all into all of these different specifics. But it's, it's pretty fair to say if you're doing, putting out digital ads to a new list, they're going to be somewhere in the awareness level. And so that is where you start seeing the very first brush with the brand. They may see one ad, and they're not expected to make an action, and there's no conversion expected at that point. The conversion is moving down the funnel. So you don't want to go to 1 to 4 in terms of purchase, but you will always have an action for that piece, a call to action that is a very specific request for the person seeing the piece, saying, so you find out who your target is. You go through all of your materials, all of your data, pull as much as you can to find out who your current customers are, and find your opportunities and find who you can sell to. And one of the things we talk about is when you're dealing with these targets and figuring out not just human targets, but what level of the funnel you are at. If you're targeting everybody, you're not targeting anybody. You have to get specific. Also, that's the best way to keep control of your budget too. It's to be very focused and specific, and also it gives you some parameters to be able to go back and measure, and we're going to be talking about this as well, to go back and see, how is this working, how is it doing, what are your clicks, where are they going, and there's some ways to set up the campaign so that you can follow these actions as they go. But just remember, whatever your original target is, that's what you go back and measure. So when you're doing a small list to 100 people for the awareness, you want to see if anybody of those 100 people maybe interacted in some way, but expecting them to be a seasoned subscriber is a bit unreasonable, right? A little plug.
So Ryan,
Computer language.
go ahead, theater language. So if you flip to the next slide, and Marcus, if you wanted to add in some commentary, Ryan mentioned I'm really busy. And right now, with my political side of life and the work that I do, targeting is critical. Targeting can also mean, to Sarah's point about having a large audience of 10,000 people where you're sending one similar message, or two audience of 5,000 people where you're sending micro-targeted messages based on a set of factors that this group likes. So everything that we do and send out happens on purpose, not on accident. Julie Dawson might be getting an ad that is targeted to her, but I'm getting an ad that's for the same company, but has different language in it, or is selling a different product. And that's micro-targeting, mail, digital, all the things. I geek out on it. And I think it's a way to, instead, like Sarah said, not marketing your entire mailing list or your entire subscriber group, but starting to parcel out people. So Marcus, do you want to mention a little bit about how you, the funnel, it's a little different, you said before, and you're going to go on into that later on in the presentation, but a little bit about your targeting efforts and how you defined your base supporters at the Arvada Center?
Absolutely. This may seem like common sense off the top of it. And I imagine we're all very common sense oriented people here, but the Arvada Center is using us as an example. We have a suite of products and services that we offer. We don't call them that in the Arvada Center. It's not something, an education class, a theater production doesn't sit on a shelf where it's something you can pick up and buy, but it's still a product that's being offered to the public. And so we know that we can't market everything to everyone, because it's going to be throwing stuff out into the ether, and we don't know that we're going to get anything back on that. We try really hard to segment and target our audiences based on a couple different factors: behavioral factors, demographic factors, geographic factors. All of those things play into who we talk to and what we talk to them about. For instance, we know that for education classes, the center offers about 700 classes a year for everyone from age 0.5 up to 99.5. So there's classes really for in a large variety of subjects, but we know that people are generally not more likely, based on the data that we've looked at, to come to a class that's going to be 8 weeks long if they live over 50 miles away, or if they live over 25 miles away. And so when we're talking about those specific suite of classes, we're targeting geographically is a really important parameter for us in that targeting. And then also past behavioral interests. Have they purchased a class before? Have they come to a class before? Have their kids come to a class before? How old are their kids now when they came to a class before? Those types of pieces of data really help inform, how do we talk to it? Because if we talk to everyone about a ceramics class we're doing, they might have no interest in ceramics. Exactly. Sarah, go right over there. We don't see anything come back on that. So it's really, really important to know, this idea of personas and target customers can really be, and Sarah's so good at it, by the way, defining personas and all of that. It's something that we think about, this person is education, this person does theater, this person's counselors, and sometimes there's bleed over in those programmatic decisions, or those marketing decisions about who we talk to about what. But that's very strategic, and we try to be very thoughtful about who we talk to about what.
So that is the perfect segue, everybody. Get ready to get really geeky. In the chat, I'm dropping the link to what Sarah is going to be reviewing. This is a yearly marketing plan for, I believe it's for Wish Garden, right?
Wish Garden, the brand that we saw earlier, yeah. And so this is how things, I know, Sarah, right? OMG. This is how Marcus will plan the entire year of those overlapping strategies, month by month, week by week, day by day, of when things are going out. And so this is when you hear things that major brands are planning their holiday ad campaigns in July. Yeah, this is how it looks behind the scenes. So Sarah, do you want to, I know Ryan throw it up quickly and everyone has access to it, but Sarah, is there anything you want to direct people's attention to when they're kind of digesting this? Yeah, let me give you just a little hint on how to read it when you look at it. So you see over on the left side, you're going to see what the type of channel is. They use words like sky and whatnot for the level. That's not something that you would be using for everybody. But I would list out every single type of tactic: postcard, ad, whatever, all the way down. And then plotted out across the board. And sometimes it's more appropriate to do this twice a year or even 4 times a year, so that you can have that nimble relationship with your program. But when you look at this has campaigns slotted in for multiple markets. They're a national company. So this is way larger than what most of us are going to create. Of course, it would be right-sized for you, but we even include ballpark prices and things like that. And this is a planning document so that we can sit down and say, all right, we have $150,000 worth of budget. Is it going to be the smartest to blow all $150,000 on posters in the New York City subway, or because you can very easily do that, or is that going to be better used if we do some specific targeting, some specific campaigns for the different markets and really dig in with those personas? That word means finding your specific top 5 customers, giving this imaginary person a name, figuring out how old they are, figuring out what they like, what they don't like, what channels of social media they're on, so that you can imagine, okay, so this person who's 19 and non-binary and TikTok might not expect the same type of messaging as this person who is 75-year-old retired midwife who is, involved in a different aspect of it. Both completely valid and important customer bases, totally different messaging.
So Marcus, do you want to just quickly, maybe just give it, like, this is obviously for a completely different brand, but the procedure, the layout, organizing your marketing year by year or quarter by quarter. Can you just give us some insight into how you do it with the Arvada Center?
Yeah, what we found to be most effective in our planning is to go program by program or product by product, because that helps us, like as we were talking about before, that helps us really segment the type of media, the type of advertising, the type of marketing we're doing per program. For instance, I keep going back to our education classes, which is something that we talk a lot about, but we tend to do a little bit more print advertising for, and direct mail advertising, I should say, for education classes, because that's just been the traditional model of advertising those classes. So that's a part of what forms the cornerstone of that plan. Whereas for theater, we know that that's a limited run. We have a limited set of dates where we have to reach people, where education's all year long. And so it changes the time frame, it changes the approach, it changes everything about how we go about talking to those specific people. So for theater, for concerts where we have a one and done, like you have 6 weeks to see this or you're going to miss it type thing, we know that that it's kind of like a ticking clock where we say this digital ad is set to expire on this date, whereas this print ad is set to hit on this date, this direct mail hits on this date. And it's kind of putting this puzzle together to say, like, how many touch points are there to talk about this specific program? And there's a statistic that I really like to throw around in these types of circumstances, and it's an art specific statistic, but I think it's kind of helpful. When someone sees an ad for like a theater production or something like that, and they see an ad on Google, for instance, it takes 33 days for that person to decide if they're going to purchase a ticket. Once they see an ad for the first time, they are at the very top of that interest or that awareness funnel, that AIDA funnel that Sarah shared earlier. So it becomes my responsibility in marketing to say, how many additional touch points do they need to really purchase that ticket from there on out? Do they need to see another ad in another platform based on their persona, based on where they are? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Is it another Google ad? Is it somewhere else? Do they need to get a postcard in the mail that really pushes them over the edge and says, oh, I saw this online, now I see it here, now I'm actually going to buy a ticket. Now I've had a chance to learn a little more about it. Is it a little deeper where we have some additional content about the product for them to learn about what it actually is, so they can learn more and be empowered then to buy a ticket? So it really is this kind of funnel shaped thing that Sarah was talking about earlier that helps us establish program by program, the schedule, the plan, the strategy, everything that forms the foundation of how we talk about all our stuff.
So that's a great segue, because now we're going to lead into, so you've decided that you want to launch a campaign or have some ongoing marketing, and you want to integrate digital marketing into those 3 touch points, because as I've said over and over and over again, and Sarah has too, and Mark has repeated it, A campaign has multiple tactics. It's not just one thing, one Facebook ad or one ad in the paper. And so Sarah's going to kind of go through what each of these tactics has to be built to a certain specification. And so we're going to bring you through what that looks like on the build component, which is a great time to possibly bring in another creative to help you hand off your brand guidelines and have them create this content for you. But Sarah, why don't you talk a little bit about the content specs for the different digital marketing channels?
Sure, absolutely. So to take that, once you've figured out who your target is and how much you have allocated for your budget, and understanding that you may not see action right away on that one ad, it's probably going to take that reinforcement. People sometimes need to see literally the same message 19 times before it even sinks into their brain. So very carefully figuring out who and when you're running this and specifics. So when you then now get into the creative, what you see on the ad, there are best practices. There are things that are, going to pretty much tank you based on everybody's experience. There's a lot of really great data out there to go through. What you really need to remember is that social and digital of all kinds is split second. So whatever you are producing needs to have as few words, which is also favored by Google and other platforms, but that can be really specifically gleaned, scooped up right away. The person who sees your different campaign legs is always going to see that same branded style. So when they see your brand, they know right away who you are, what you offer, and they start making those connections. So you'll also see here, there are video ads are always more successful. They have that motion that is just psychologically catches your eye, because if you've been seeing static picture, static picture, static picture, oh, what's that? That's moving. You stop on it. And so it's try and remember that there's lots of different ways to do these digital ads. So you'll see here, there are tons of formats that are very specific for the different platforms. You have landscape ads, you have story ads, and they all have different sizes, different specs that you need to work to. There are softwares that you can DIY this on. For example, Canva, it can, it doesn't necessarily, it's not super seamless on it, but there is a possibility to get the best experience. I would look at it like this kind of. So what we see here is this is more specific Google ads, and these that you'll see on here, there are some mostly finalized ads, couple of drafts on here for a campaign that we did for the Clear Creek School District that is very specifically an enrollment campaign. So these are 1 second at a glance, seems really simple, but somebody clicks on that. Can you go to the next slide? Is it on the next one? Oh, okay, we'll get to the next one. I gave you links on for all the different main platforms so that you can go through and find their specifications. Now, don't try to do every platform. Find the one that's best for you. You will throw all your money away if you try to just put little things on each of them. I'd be happy to go through some more of these, make sure wherever you are is wherever your customer base is. And they also have ads available on streaming platforms called pre-roll. You'll see that when you're watching a Hulu, when you're watching a YouTube, it's the thing that pops up before. And those have had some pretty phenomenal results. Eyes are there, eyes are on YouTube. So yes, exactly. That's the type of thing. Eyes are on Hulu. They're not necessarily.
Can I comment on that real quick? This idea about, what we've been talking about to this point about finding who you're talking to, who you want to talk to, looking at data to inform those decisions about who you want to reach. I have a good example to offer. So the Arvada Center is opening a production of Disney's Beauty and the Beast the day after Thanksgiving. And we all hope, some of us probably are familiar with Beauty and the Beast. It's a family thing. It's a Disney thing. And we were thinking about it and we looked at data and we were like, okay, kids are on YouTube and families are generally watching YouTube and are putting videos on for their kids. So we're putting a fairly significant investment of our marketing budget for that particular show into YouTube advertising for that show. I haven't started running them yet, so I don't have any data to give you because it doesn't open until for a little while. But I'm happy we can circle back, and I'm happy to share some of those results once they go. But it's something new for us. We're trying it kind of in a really extensive campaign as a one touch point for Beauty and the Beast to put that up on YouTube. And it's a decision that was made based on the factors we were just talking about. So that's where eyes are, and especially family eyes.
So the next part, oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it's so smart to have gone through that homework, because as a family with a small kid, I could not agree more. That is exactly how we behave in this house.
But what we're talking about creating ads here is the landing page. And so after you create these beautiful ads, where are you directing people to? And Sarah's going to talk a minute, and Marcus can maybe give some insight on that example of how maybe you should not send people to just your homepage, but maybe build something that's a little unique for tracking. So go ahead, Sarah, and then you have some live examples from those Google ads.
Yes, absolutely. So you'll see this referred to as a landing page or a microsite or a campaign page by multiple different types of organizations or people. Basically, the idea of it is that it's very specific for that campaign. So whoever clicked on that graphic on Google is going to get specifically to that page that carries through the visuals of the campaign that they've seen, and is where you blow out your content. Because as we saw, you've got 6 words on an ad to get all the information together. We want to entice people to go to the landing page. And that's also where you can do things like gather contact information, and people can make direct actions from the site. All right, so do we want to go forward?
Yeah, or they can buy tickets to Beauty and the Beast.
Exactly, and you can track it because you are going to your own website type of a thing. Now, the reason you wouldn't necessarily just go to the main homepage is that it doesn't have that specific messaging to get that action. So every smaller thing you're doing has a funnel too. You have your main funnel for the business, and then whatever project you have a funnel, because like I said, that action could just be the call to action for that piece. So microsites are very important. If you build it within your standard website, that's also a total possibility. And that's good too, because it's always good to drive traffic, drive it there. So you'll see this. This was a simple landing page that we did, and it's a space of the website. It has multiple pages. It has very easily scrolled content, but as you see there at the top, we have the actions that we want them to take: new student enrollment, returning student enrollment, and could not be more obvious what we're asking them to do, which carries that message forward. Does anybody else want to put anything on that?
Just that we also sometimes with different campaigns, I will make a copy of a page from a website and just make sure it is marked back end internally as I will modify it to be a landing page, because I'm a geek who's tracking stuff. I want to know, I put out this ad and I made a carbon copy or a lookalike page, but I want to track the ad analytics. How many clicks did I get? And also to Sarah's point, I want it to be specific and unique. So it's hidden pages on your website. It's all kinds of little back end tricks, but it's just a way to take content that we already have and take our URLs. So we could do a URL like clearcreekschools.com/jobs/after school program Marcus, I'm sure can you talk a little bit about what that looks like for you and how, because you're juggling a lot of different things here.
Yeah, to Sarah Gallo's point, who put a note in the chat about measuring success, one of the things that we do to measure success is driving traffic to the website. And that is one thing that we like to measure and see month by month, week by week, tracking how many people are getting to our site, how long they stay on a specific page on the site, because that determines what type of content we're putting on that page. And are people actually engaging with it? Are they looking at it? We have these ideas about providing context around our productions, around our products, to make sure that people have the information they need to make a purchase. For a product like Beauty and the Beast, we don't need to do that as much. People recognize that title pretty quickly, and they say, yes, I want to do that, or I need to look at my schedule and I'll get back to that, which is when, again, they need that little reminder. Another ad pops up in their feed. There's this whole idea, which we don't need to get into right now, about retargeting for people who have been to a site once and then they get an ad based on their web traffic patterns. So that's something that is a little deeper dive into digital advertising, but we found to be really helpful in the past. But we tend to build all of our landing pages, all of our pages where we direct people are on the arvadacenter.org web property, because we want people to be on that page. And then within each landing page is exactly as Sarah and Katie were talking about, the content's blown up. There's everything they might need to know to make a purchase, to convert from a visitor into a purchaser is on that page. How many times they come back to that page before they make that purchase is up to us to determine how many times we can get them there to get interested in it. Another example is we have a play running right now called The River Bride. That is a play that people don't know about. It's a Brazilian folk tale. It's kind of magical. It's a really beautiful play, but it's something that people it doesn't have that immediate recognition. So the timeline of people being able to make a decision about learning about it and purchasing it becomes longer. And so it's up to us to build that into the strategy to allow people the information and the time to purchase the ticket or make the purchase.
So Marcus, now it's time for your part of the presentation to, everyone's so excited to talk a little bit more about the Arvada Center and talk to us about how you get us enticed all the time to come in and have a great experience with your programs and shows.
Yeah, I think I want to start this by just kind of rehashing kind of what's already been said. Is like whenever we start planning a campaign, we always start with who we are and what we do and who we want to be. That this language, the kind of copy, the creative, the beauty, the content that we're putting out always has to be based on our brand voice, our brand tone, who we are as an organization. That's always the underpinnings of everything we do, regardless of program. Now that forms the foundation, but then on top of that, we then start talking about specific programming areas like education, theater, concerts, galleries, whatever the case may be. And that's what the second bullet point on this slide is: consider who we're trying to reach. A gallery visitor is a different person completely than a theater visitor. Now, sometimes there are people who like art or like arts in general, but very usually, and 9 times out of 10, their interests are going to be geared specifically towards one thing or another. So that really has to inform the strategy. And then also thinking about our return. We can't just put money out there, and we got to think about what kind of money we're going to get back. So in the next slide, I think, yes, this is an example of a page from our brand book in the Arvada Center. This is how we want to be seen by our audiences: warm and welcoming, simple and clear, playful and engaging. I take what I do very seriously, but the arts is not heart surgery and it's not rocket science. And so we have the opportunity within our brand to be playful and also being warm and welcoming. And that this forms everything. It really forms that foundation. So this is an example of that brand book that I can share with you later. On the next slide, this is what I wanted to touch on. This is a variation on this kind of funnel idea that informs the strategy the Arvada Center uses. So we obviously are interested in this funnel idea where people they're aware at the very top and then they make a purchase at the very bottom. And how do we get them from the top to the bottom? And this is how we try to get them from the top to the bottom. We attract, we engage, and we delight. Strangers, prospects, customers, promoters are all kind of the different layers within that funnel that Sarah shared earlier. But this idea about how we do this, attract, engage, delight, again, underpins everything that we try to do content-wise and copy-wise, creative-wise. And it has to be this kind of circular, cyclical model, because once they come to the center and they're delighted by what they've seen and what they've experienced, we want them to come back. Hopefully they don't end up as a stranger again. They are now a promoter and they're out there telling their friends about the experience they had. And digital advertising is such a powerful tool in all of this. And word of mouth continues to be a really powerful tool as well. And digital advertising can help prompt that word of mouth for people to share stuff and be able to promote the programs that we're trying to advertise as well. So in the next one is kind of just a little breakdown about how these look practically at the Arvada Center. We drive earned revenue, increase organizational awareness. That's the attract phase. That uses our kind of content and everything we're putting out. We create and deliver positive, consistent brand messaging. That's the engage phase. We want people to click through and read about the shows, read about the classes, read about the gallery exhibitions. So if you see us putting out videos, interviews with artists, roundtables with directors and actors, that's the engage phase, where we want people to click through and watch these videos and watch and see these things that we're doing. And then the delight phase is after they've kind of come in and they've decided they want to engage with us. They want to come and be a patron, and they're delighted by what they're seeing. Customer-centered service that makes a visit to the Arvada Center an unforgettable and enjoyable experience. It seems very simple at its core that these three levels are what we base all of our advertising and marketing creative decisions on, but it helps us keep things streamlined. It helps us keep things consistent, and helps us form a really consistent creative brand voice that we're trying to get out into the world. On the next one, digital advertising is the cornerstone of our campaigns. It really is. I mean, we build a campaign starting with digital advertising. It has to be, it's the diversity in the mix. And when I say mix, I'm talking about media mix, TV, radio, digital, all of that stuff being a part of the advertising plan. Digital is what comes first, and it's where we decide to invest first. And different strokes for different folks. Like I said, like we talked about before, we can do a broad, what I refer to as like broad spectrum, where we put out an ad and just want everyone in the world to see it. That kind of brand awareness stuff is worth the investment, but it's not going to convert necessarily into what we need to see purchase wise, or the earned revenue side that we like to see come in for shows and concerts and education classes and all that. And I gave you some list here of stuff that we do almost for every single campaign, every single product that we're marketing. These 4 things are part of the underpinnings of digital marketing that we do. There's Facebook and Instagram, there's digital display ads. So when you're on the internet and you see the banner ad on the side, or you see the thing on the bottom of the page, we use a third-party vendor to help us place those ads around the internet. And then targeted email campaigns. Sarah and I were talking about this yesterday. One area where we found out, offer this as a hint to people, one area where we found really strong successes is utilizing third-party vendors who have a different database than us to reach out to new audiences who might not be as familiar with our Arvada Center programs. For instance, we partner with Colorado Parent Magazine fairly frequently to do targeted emails to their audiences to learn about education classes that are happening at the center. So they have a really strong subscriber base and people who read their magazine fairly consistently, and it's a digital product that has a pretty strong conversion rate. So it's really helpful for that. And then we also use our own internal lists, that helps build up loyalty and retention as well. I can't remember what's next. So, KPI. So this is a fun little acronym that Sarah wants to talk about.
Well, yes, hang on. There we go. My screen has decided to do weird things and I can't see it. Well, I can speak to it based on what I think was there. So what the basics on KPI, that means key performance indicators. And that is what you're going to decide are the metrics you're going to measure for that piece. So part of a campaign, as we've said, you have to have multiple pieces. I call it the 3-legged stool. If you don't have at least 3 tactics, your campaign is going to fall over. That's it. And then that can be all kinds of different channels. It can be digital, it can be print, it can be direct mail, all of that stuff. But when you are measuring your key performance indicators, temper your expectations, because remember what Marcus was saying about the number of times that people come back and how long it takes to make a decision. So a key performance indicator might be somebody interacted with this awareness ad instead of going to your bottom line and saying, oh, great, we got another $100,000 off of this app. So just making sure you're lining up what you're measuring before and going back to that same piece after.
And Sarah, to your Sarah Gallo asked a question about looking for third-party vendors to help her with her efforts. And so to Sarah Flanagan Silcott's point and to Marcus's point, yes, there are a lot of third-party vendors that can help you deploy your strategy, but I would absolutely echo Sarah Flanagan Silcott and Marcus with your expectations for what you want to get. And then also that Into the Woods marketing and communications plan is really cool to look at, Marcus, because it kind of gives an insight into how you not only planned out your touches of your stool, It's kind of like, a giant chair, actually, I think, but you have more than 3 things going on and they're in synchronicity. So all of your vendors, if you hire someone to run your social media for you, if you hire someone to place ads for you on Google, and if you hire someone to do your print marketing or put an ad at a bus stop or put a blimp over a Broncos game, they are all doing those things in a coordinated manner.
I think, Sarah Gallo, to specifically address that question, there's a couple different things. This sounds pretty simplistic, but Google is a really good place to start. And I don't mean like Google third-party vendor list. That's not what I mean. But Google has a really strong suite of services, including like digital display advertising, that a vendor that we use separately. But there's also the opportunity to enlist Google's help as a vendor to help place your ads around the internet. One thing that's worth investigating for your specific industry is what types of print publications are investing in digital products for themselves. Color Apparent magazine's an example that I gave earlier, but we also partner with the Denver Post. They have a really new, strong suite of digital services that they offer as well, including digital display ads, targeted emails, boosted social media posts, all those types of things. So it's about right sizing, because I got to tell you, when you're talking to a vendor about their digital products, it can get really overwhelming really quickly. So kind of going in with kind of what your goals are and what you really want to have a third-party vendor help you with is really helpful. But these are just some local examples of things that we've used, but also maybe talking to some people in your industry about who do they use, what do they use, and how do they reach their clients or their customers in a really effective way. That can create some also just different resources as well. I hope that's helpful.
And I will just add, you can always use your Arvada Chamber resources and members for some of those resources too. I'll shout out Julie Dawson with Value Ads.
Thank you.
Another good local resource for you. So
Thanks.
And also, we're talking about sometimes your current clients are your best resources. And so if you want to know how people are finding you, ask. We're learning some things about our client base by having them just do some simple questions. How did you find out about me? Especially some of our clients who think that the world revolves around Facebook and Instagram are learning that not everybody sees their post. And that sometimes for some industries, repeats and referrals are their best sources of new income, new clients. So it doesn't hurt sometimes to put out that ad on Value Ads and say, hey, and have that coupon callback that Julie's famous for. That's a way you can track. You can track if people saw you by using the code that you only put in Value Ads, and then have the same ad with a different code in the Arvada press. Just saying. Lots of options here. But Marcus, he has a couple of good, never stop learning. I think, Sarah, we live and die on that. The internet is always evolving. Marketing is always evolving. We're hearing new trends. Marcus has a niche industry, of course, and Sarah and I kind of pride ourselves on we're able to adapt and be flexible for whatever our clients need. We are here to market their product. They're the expert in their product or service. We're the expert in getting that word out there into the stratosphere and targeting the audience they want. I often tell clients sometimes, why do we focus so hard on the people that have never experienced your product? And as Sarah Gallo put in the chat, yeah, repeats and referrals. Give some love.
Mm-hmm.
What you measure is what you treasure. So if you value your current clients, you'll make an investment in retaining them as much as you're consistently out trying to attract new clients. So that's kind of my parting words. But Marcus, any parting thoughts that you're thinking? And Sarah?
I have to say, we had a really good time coming up with these little few words yesterday, especially since we get to quote Shakespeare at the end of this. It's always a good time whenever you get to quote Willie Shakes at the end of a presentation. But just to echo what Katie said, never stop learning. Digital, especially in the world of digital advertising and digital marketing, so much changes so quickly. And I'm not saying it's something you need to get online and read about every day, but it's something that is worth keeping in your periphery and your peripheral attention to say, are there big changes that are happening within the realm of digital advertising that I need to be aware of as a business owner or as a marketing person that are going to affect the way that I talk to my potential customers or my current customers? This idea of loyalty and retention, if I can just share an anecdote real quick about kind of the industry that I'm in, we suffered a lot as a result of COVID, as many other industries have. The arts industry was the first to go down and the last to come back up. live performance was. And what that meant is that the trust in arts industry got shaken as a result of COVID. So it became our responsibility as an arts organization to rebuild that trust with our current patrons, with the people who loved coming to the Arvada Center initially, or to any concert or anything, to say, yes, you can do this, and it's going to be fun, and you're going to be safe, you're going to be healthy, it's going to be okay, and all this stuff once the things started to come back to life. So that was our core coming back to life strategy, was to rebuild that loyalty that we had really built our foundation on for years and years and years. It needed to be rebuilt. And now we're in this phase of starting to get back out to some new people again, to get back to some area of normalcy. So, you know, it's worth acknowledging that these world events, catastrophic world events, hopefully there won't be any more world events or anything, but, you know, play a big factor in how they affect your strategy. And a strategy can't exist in a vacuum.
So, yeah, I just want to close and would love to get to, if you have any questions, I know Sarah Gallo, you have your hand raised. Feel free to come off mute and ask your question for us.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still getting ready for work. So sorry, I'm not on video. This was really helpful. I think the biggest thing is that you know, I'm turning into like a marketing person and just I nerd out on how I'm marketed to, and like I always like to give credit when people are a little more thoughtful about it, and makes me want to buy their stuff because they put a lot of effort into it. So a weird thought process. But anyways, I was wondering, like, kind of more along the lines of like PR. So I see, you know, we're kind of a public health solution. And I think to gain the public's trust, like on the front end, without referrals, you know, having, you know, health is just a hot topic, you know, some PR around what we're doing as an access to care solution. And so my biggest thing is finding, because I know that there's people wanting to write articles about, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion, you know, health equity specifically, and, you know, obviously successes in the health industry. And so how do I find, I mean, that's the biggest thing, is I want to find that PR end of things that doesn't necessarily cost me money, but just is where we're both providing value on both ends, to like maybe news or, you know, again, well, any news outlet, I guess. So any recommendations there?
You know, we were just, Marcus, of course, like Sarah and I were just talking yesterday with a client, Sarah, who's kind of in that same, you know, boat of, and for what we said was the most important thing is to establish yourself as the trusted, knowledgeable expert in the space. A simple way to do that in a very universal cast is blogging. I know the Chamber offers free opportunities to blog using their URL, which has a high search rate. But also, you know, if in the limited time that you have in your life to run your business, write it once and repeat it 1,000 times. So establishing some kind of way where you can deposit your knowledge and information, and that can be used to make ads as well as put out press releases, do a monthly blog posting that you can put out to different outlets and sources, news shows like Colorado and Company, specials on 9 News. I mean, there is a rising moment where an article you wrote in a blog 5 months ago is suddenly extraordinarily relevant. And you can kick that up and all of a sudden find yourself being interviewed on a local news station. So I'll let Sarah and Marcus and maybe add in, but I think that Sarah, there's this idea of you should be talking about yourself and then casting that out broadly, not trying, like our client was trying to write for a specific newspaper. And we were saying, why are you investing so much time going after this one small media outlet when you could write universally to talk to a larger client base and then target that message to the specific news outlet, depending on the time of the year, or maybe there's a national holiday coming up. Like I think National Physician Assistant Day is coming up soon. It might, I think yes, I saw that.
Thank you for noticing.
Right, you could write an article like, what is a PA and why are PAs, like, I think that education space of I'm a trusted resource, I know what I'm talking about. You're not necessarily selling your product, but you're establishing yourself as I know what I'm talking about. And you also might need my service one day. So here I am. Flanagan, do you want, and Marcus, do you want to add anything? Because I know yesterday we literally just had this
I
conversation
know.
about desperately seeking news outlets and why don't they
Yeah.
want to talk to me? Yeah.
Yeah, I would just love to tack on a little bit. The strategy that Katie is talking about is it's so important. And there are different ways to get that earned media out there for PR. And content wise, the press releases that I have had be the most successful are those that are narrative, that tell a very specific story, and it can contain a quote or more. Because what you want to do is, if you're writing a press release, there's a very specific format, right? I'm sure you're familiar with it, but just in case to put it out there, you want to make sure you're formatted very specifically. You stay within your one page to maybe a second paragraph on the next page. What you're doing is handing your reporter basically their whole story. If they have only 200 words to write, they can just take the press release and run it. If it's something
that's helpful.
yeah,
I didn't realize that's what it was for, because I can
Yeah.
write that. I just didn't understand. I felt like they were so rigid, but that's what I usually see, and it's like really technical because I'm in the health innovation space. But if I can write a narrative, I mean, I have a million narratives. That's what is our bread and butter.
Yeah,
so.
we've had press releases, Sarah, literally be cut and pasted, and they become the story, like they are the story.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, because
yeah,
I can
Marcus,
do that. That's nice.
Marcus, you're always in the flipping news, I feel. Do you want to give a little bit of insight onto how, like, this, it doesn't happen on accident. It happens on purpose sometimes because you badger the crap out of them to write, right? I mean, that's just what happens.
Yes, there's a certain amount of badgering, certainly that's a part of it, but I'm so glad that Sarah and Katie, you said this, because that is exactly my approach in PR, is to write it the way that a journalist would write it. And making those connections with journalists is one thing, but also then having the narrative and the human interest story that is more likely to be picked up by a journalist, and you can write it that way, and you have these really compelling quotes. That's the strategy that I put into every single press release that I put out there, because then, exactly as Sarah just said, it gets copied and pasted into a newspaper, and that works for me, because then it's in a newspaper and it's not just something that I posted on my site. And it's always helpful to think journalistically in writing, like, how can I increase the likelihood this is going to be copied and pasted? Human interest, especially in your space, in the health innovation space, that I imagine this is way outside my lane, by the way, let me just say that, but I imagine those human interest stories are there, and it's something that it can really be picked up really easily by an outlet and will help establish you. We have this idea of like thought leadership, in the arts sector, where we're trying to establish ourselves as a thought leader at the Arvada Center. So that's why we put out these pieces of content that establish us as a trusted resource in our space. And it's replicating that kind of model.
Thank you. That is just validation on how I felt it should be, but I just don't think that a lot of organizations do that well. Especially in healthcare, it's kind of depressing that, like, we all have these really good stories, but nobody really, has the outside thought to be less sterile.
But then, Sarah, there's also, I mean, and I know our time is short, and I dropped all of our contact information in the chat for everybody, but that's also the part where you might want to partner with a blog writer to help you make it so that it can be easily digestible to the common audience. So how do you take that and write that technically, or write it for, like, again, we're talking about targeting your audiences. And so if you're trying to encourage people to get their blood pressure checked, or whatever it is, whatever the message is that is timely, it could really be great to work with a writer that could just help you to make sure that, and then looking back to the personas, like back to the audience, how do we use the language, the words, the average American has an 8th grade reading level. So how do we take this down and make this as simple and digestible as possible? And you might find that, like Marcus said, with some good thought partnership with someone who's not in the industry, but can help you make sure you're hitting your mark out into the larger, broader universe.
Thank you.
Cool. This has been so much fun. I'm so glad we did this like this, Ryan. This is awesome.
I know. And Sarah Gallo, thanks for the question and great answers from the team. Great presentation for everybody. I want to just thank once again Katie, Sarah, and Marcus for your time and expertise. Thanks everyone for attending. We didn't get to to more than one question, but that was a very thoughtful, long question to get to. If you have other questions, feel free to contact our presenters afterwards. I will follow up in an email with the presentation and their contact info. So please reach out.
And Ryan, I'll give you our brand book to include in that follow-up email as well, just to send to everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Marcus. Okay, well, hope to see you next time and see you soon from the Arvada Chamber. Thanks so much and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.